Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's FootPrints Administrators webinar. This month, we're going to cover overviews on the new version of FootPrints that came out. It was a minor patch, however, it's got some important fixes to it. We're also going to do a part 2 on the business rules, quick templates, and quick descriptions that we talked about on last month's session. So on the last month's session was more of a sort of a discussion, a theoretical discussion, and a lot of you guys asked to see some examples. So I've got some examples configured, so I'll be able to show you what it looks like, as well as show you the configuration to achieve that. And then we're also going to talk about field dependencies versus hiding by business rule. So in order to show and hide fields, you can use one or the other, or a combination of both. And we'll discuss about some of the pros and cons of each method. As usual, my name is Nick Room, a senior consultant with RGR Innovations. And I'm with RGR Innovations, who's a partner of BMC since 2004, specializing especially in the FootPrints space, but also in ITSM in general, ITAM, and contract lifecycle management. So let's get started. So last month on our session 8, we covered some ideas. You see them listed there. We also talked about some self-service UI design considerations and those business rules, quick template descriptions that we had sort of a discussion on. We also talked about upgrading from version 11 and prior. That was a fairly high-level discussion. We did also have an in-between session. I called it session 8A. That was actually on June 28th, and it's also available, the recording on rginnovations.com/webinar. And that was a more in-depth discussion on upgrading from version 11. That was done in collaboration with BMC and targeted mostly all of their version 11 clients and prior. If you did attend that webinar, great. If you need to watch it again, the recording is there. If you didn't attend and you'd like to see it, the recording is available here. This week's recording will probably be available on our website early next week. Combination of vacations and stuff going on this week. I don't think we'll be able to have it up on our website this week, but early next week it'll be there. Next time on session 10, and that will be occurring, the tentative date is August 16th. For next session's webinar. So we'll be going over a few best practices on how to set up your business rules, proper naming conventions, setting the orders and what you should take into account, as well as best practices for designing your forms, how to make them more intuitive and user-friendly for both your agents and your customers. We'll also do an introduction to the HTML code control, form control that you can apply on forms. This is a more specialized functionality, and I don't know if any of you guys are using it, but it can be pretty powerful. It's kind of on the borderline of coding at that point, because it's a form control you can add to your form to write your own HTML or JavaScript code. We'll also be introducing Layla Wang on that session, who is one of our support analysts here, who has a developer background, and she's done a lot of work with this. So she'll be presenting at least one really neat feature that I don't want to spoil just quite yet, but something that's been highly demanded by a lot of clients. You can register for session 10 at the link there, and I will have that pasted into chat later on. I don't have any ideas to highlight this time around, so I'm kind of taking a break from highlighting ideas. In the past, I've been doing about 5 ideas a session, and it kind of gets to the point where I run out of ideas that I feel like promoting, if I could put it that way. There's certainly no shortage of ideas, but there, some of which I more strongly advocate for. So for this session and for the next session, there won't be any feature highlights for that. Okay, so let's dive in. We'll start with some of the things that are fixed in the new version of FootPrints. So I'm just going to switch back over here. I actually don't have anything really to present for that. But the discussions around that are, so version 2023.01.001 came out about 2 weeks ago now, pretty hot on the heels of the 2023.01 release. And while it does, so it's a patch release, right? So the way the versioning numbers work, right? So 2023, that's the year. 01 is going to be the first release of that year, and 001 is a patch, the first patch of the 01 release. Now, generally, BMC reserves patches to fix critical defects that were introduced in a particular version. Now, in this case, it has addressed a few defects that were introduced in that version, but it also addresses, I think it's about 7 or 8 defects that were not introduced in this version that were introduced in other versions. So quite happy with that. In fact, this patch release fixes more defects than its parent did. I think the parent release, fixed something like 11 defects, and this one fixed 14, something like that. Some of the notable fixes include being able to single click on a tile within the service catalog. So if you're using the service catalog and you have those tiles, and you have click here to submit an incident, and then right below it says request service, and you have to click that request service link in order to actually do it, that defect has now been fixed again. So you can click anywhere on the tile to bring that up. So that's one of the bigger ones. There's also fixes around a few different UI elements, just quality of life improvements, things like making certain cells bigger so that it's easier to see, or getting rid of duplication in the UI. I can get you guys a more formal list if you're interested. Of course, you can also go. Actually, you know what? I should have done that. Let me pause my screen share here. I'm going to pull up BMC's website, because of course this is all in their release notes. So you can just log into BMC's website and view the release notes for yourselves. Now, if you're a client of ours, you should have received an email from me already. So we always notify our clients when a new version comes out, along with the highlights. But if not, I'm just going to pull it up over here and get back to the share. So I'll grab this link here and I'll post it into the Zoom chat. So you can see chat over here. So you have the release notes over here for the patch. And then if you scroll down, you'll have, you got to go to known and corrected over here, and you'll get a list of all of those defects that are fixed. Now, if your support is direct with BMC, any defects that were fixed, you should have been notified on already. Okay, I have to log into this thing. Give me a quick second. So if you're a direct customer of BMC, any defects that were fixed, you should have gotten an email for already. So you should be aware of it. If you're with another partner, they may have a process where they notify you or not. It's really kind of up to them. But regardless of whether your support is with BMC or with a partner, you can always come to their documentation site here to view their release notes. So on this known and corrected issues here, and I'll maybe point this out here as well, because it is a little tricky sometimes. So you have the list of the defects here. There's the defect number, and you can see here that it has been corrected in the patch. And as you scroll through, you'll see all the ones that have been corrected. Now, at some point, as you scroll down this list here, it won't say patch 1 anymore. It'll just say release 1. So that you do have to just be aware, see right here, right? So now these were fixed in that 2023.01, not in the 01 patch. So it's anything here and above. But there's a good chunk of stuff in here that we were pretty happy with the release. Okay, so next up is giving you a little bit of a show and tell on those business rules to do quick templates and quick descriptions. So to quickly recap that from last month's discussion, I had mentioned that when using quick templates, you can run into some problems where you can't change the sort order, right? It sorts alphabetically, and you have no control over that other than doing things like, prefixing your template name with numbers to put them in certain orders. But you can't change that order. You cannot group them. You also can't limit access to say, these templates, I only want the level 1 agents to use, and these templates, I only want the level 2 agents to use. You can control, agent versus customer, but beyond that, you can't go further. So what I've got here to show off is I've got some templates configured as business rules, and I've also then grouped them in categories. So what you'll see here, I've got a brand new form here. If I choose my category of hardware, I have my subcategory field that would show up as per normal, but then I also have agent templates over here. Now I've called this agent template for the purposes of this demo, but of course, normally you would just call this templates or something like that. Then I have my templates, and I can pick on them, and it populates them just as if I had selected a template. Likewise, I can then say, okay, well, no, I wanted the desktop one, and switch. And then I can switch my category to software and then get the software related quick templates. Now, because this is a drop down, you can change the order, right? It doesn't have to be alphabetical. You can set the order whatever you want it to be. I have this, in this case, my templates are filtered based on the category that I have, just like, let's say, subcategory. So this is using field dependencies with agent template being a child of category, just like subcategory would be. Of course, you can configure that any which way you like. Now, these are agent templates. If I switch gears over here to another browser where I'm logged in as someone I have configured as a manager, if I go to my form here and I pick category hardware, I now have manager templates. So it's a separate field, but it functions the same way. And you'll see I still have the desktop and laptop like I had on the agent one. Oops, on the agent one over here. But I now have an additional template that is only available to the manager. So this is another thing that you can't do just using the regular templates, but using this methodology you can. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what we discussed last month, and you like what you see. Now the configuration of this is different than you would quick templates, because essentially we're not using quick templates at all. We're using on-screen business rules. The level of effort to configure is about the same. So if I have 20 templates that I want to build, normally you would build them as 20 quick templates. And in this case here, I have to build 1 or 2 fields, depending on your design, and then 20 on-screen rules. So if I were to show you what the configuration of that looks like, if I go over to my workspace incident, I'll start off on the form. So you can see here, I have 2 fields, the agent templates field and the manager templates field. They're both single select drop downs, and of course, optional, so that you can use a template if you want to, but you don't have to. And you can see that the manager template has, actually, let me start here with the agent one. The agent one has just 4, right? Just for demo purposes, laptop, desktop, Windows, Linux. The manager one has the exact same ones that the agent one had, but then it's got those super ones that the agent is not able to use. Now I have these fields on 2 separate rows like this with no other fields on that row, so that if the field does not display because it's hidden, then the whole row doesn't show up, right? And that's how I can get away with having just the 1 row like this for both of them. Next up, configuring the actual template part of it is an on-screen rule. So if I look at these ones here, I've got laptop, desktop, Windows, and Linux. So I'm going to have 4 different templates. I'm going to have 4 different rules. So if I go to my rules, expand here, so there they are, right? And these rules are very simple. On-screen rule, on-screen, on update. Basically, whenever the fields are equal to that value, I set all the fields that I want to set, just like I would in the quick template. I also have an extra one here where I then blank out the template field so that it's ready to be used again if ever you wanted to, you picked the wrong template and you wanted to change. So all of the rules look exactly the same, just with different information based on what the template is. So all that's pretty easy. Now, how did I get I go back to my form here, how did I get this functionality to work over here? So this is actually pretty easy as well. Essentially, I have two users that I used in this example here. I have Jake, no, not Jake, sorry. I have Chuck, who is my manager. And I have Roy, who is my agent. Now, you might have noticed they have different system roles. The system role has no bearing here. What's important is the container role. So if I go down to service desk has an agent role for Roy, and Chuck here is going to have a different role. He's going to have a manager role. Now, in both cases, it's still an agent, right? Versus a customer, it's still an agent, but it is a different role. So now what I do in my roles, service desk. So there's the agent role. Roles always take a little bit to load here, and then I'll pull up the manager one. So both of these roles, for the purposes of this, there's other distinctions that I have here, like for example, agents cannot unlock records and managers can. But for the context of what we're looking at here, the difference is going to be in field permissions. So I have the agent templates, and I got to move a few of my pop-ups out the way here. So the agent has the agent templates field as editable. And if I scroll down, the manager one is set to no access. And then the reverse is going to be true for the manager role. They don't have access to the agent one, and they have access to the manager one. So that's how you're able to make that so that an agent sees the agent one and a manager sees the manager one. So hopefully that shows you everything you know to essentially set this up. If you like this, feel free to try it out, right? You might find this a lot nicer than the quick template. There are still a use case for quick templates, and primarily that's going to be for any template that you want to have created by business logic. So created by a business rule or created from a service catalog. But generally, my preference is not to use quick templates for users to use, and instead relying on dropdowns like these because they're much more flexible. So that's the quick template as business rule. The second side of this is the quick description. So quick descriptions we mentioned last month. It's a legacy feature from version 11 and prior, and it doesn't exist in current version of FootPrints. And what quick description allows you to do is automatically insert a predefined set of text into the description field so that you can easily reply. Useful especially in larger organizations, large private companies, government organizations, things of that nature, where you want to have a standardized responses. And so if there's a certain situation like, hey, ticket closed, send this pre-generated response. If it's waiting for customer, need more information, send this response. So we can achieve the functionality. Now, actually, let me step back here. So in version 11 and prior, there were two concepts of quick descriptions: private quick descriptions and I don't think that's the right term. I think it was personal quick descriptions and regular quick descriptions. Now, regular quick descriptions were, built by the system administrator and usable by all users, whereas private quick descriptions were built by a specific agent and only available to them. Personally, I don't like that second part there. I feel like that's really counterintuitive to how you would want to design a system. But that one is not really achievable. But the regular quick descriptions is. And so, for example, on my form here, I've already shown you the agent templates. We can replicate the quick descriptions the exact same way using a dropdown and an on-screen rule. So if I go down over here to my public notes, I created another dropdown called quick description, and here's my list of pre-canned responses. Hey, I need more information. Boom, it drops this, and then I just have to put in like the user's name, right? Steve or something like that, right? Or no, we're closing out the ticket. So you can have your pre-canned responses that way. You can also filter this list. For example, issue resolved. Well, that would only happen if the ticket is closed. So for example, I can also filter out this list here based on what status I'm in. if ever you had a lot of quick description. These are built the exact same way. It's just an on-screen business rule that sets some fields, right? So there's the quick description ones right over here. So if you guys like the concept of quick descriptions or, kind of missed it from when you were on version 11, easily recreatable this way, even though the feature itself isn't there, right? The end result is the same. Okay, so that covers that segment. If you guys do have any additional questions on that, feel free to reach out to me, and I can answer any questions you have. We're going to move on to our last topic, which is field dependencies. Actually, sorry, I'm going to put a pin in that because I did forget one important step here, showing off over here category. Hardware, I have the hardware templates, category software, I have the software templates. That is done by field dependencies. So if I go over here to fields, in this case, it's being driven by category. So if I go over here, normally you'd have category to subcategory, right? And showing the subcategories appropriately. But then I show the template fields as well. So they're down over here. So that's how I can do that for hardware and for software. Okay, so we're going to switch gears to our last topic, which is field dependencies versus business rules. Why use one versus the other, or when can you use one or the other? So field dependencies, which I have here, are generally used for things like the category tree or things like status and substatus, right? Those are common situations where you would use field dependencies. So there are a couple things to conditions that have to be met or constraints with field dependencies. So for starters, field dependencies, you cannot use all fields as a parent. Parent fields have to be a single select field, a Boolean field, and I believe that might be it. Although some of the other ones, like for example, I can't use a simple text as a parent. I don't think I can use a date time. Yeah, I can't use a date time. So I think it's just single, select, and Boolean that are available as parents. However, any field can be used as a child. So that's kind of constraint number one, is you're limited in what types of field can be used as a parent. The other constraint, and this is the more common one, is that a child can only belong to one parent. So if I go back to category, for example, I have subcategory as a child of category. So that means if I go somewhere else, like let's say status, I cannot add subcategory, subcategory to my list here. It doesn't show up. I have substatus, but subcategory doesn't show up here because it's being used somewhere else. Sometimes there is a requirement to show a certain field only under a condition of having two parents. Something like that, you have to use a combination of field dependencies and business rules for that. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second here. There's one more thing to mention about field dependencies. Now, this was changed very early on in the design of FootPrints 12, and it was changed for the better. And that is, if I go to, for example, category over here. So if I choose category hardware, you can see with the field dependencies, I have some choices. And if I go to software, obviously I have different choices. However, if I go to something like general information, subcategory does not show up because I don't have it listed as a child. So if I go over to my configuration here, you can see that I've got hardware subcategory, software subcategory, printing subcategory, but down over here, general information does not have a child. Now that does mean whenever the child field is removed because of field dependencies, its data is removed as well. So if I were to go to hardware and set display and then save the ticket, the subcategory field would have the text display. However, if I flip this and I go to remote connectivity, subcategory not only gets hidden on the form here, but its data gets removed. Now that's intentional. That's what we want, especially in the context of category to subcategory or status to substatus. Because if I'm doing reporting, whether it's the FootPrints reporting or third-party reporting, I don't want subcategory to show me values that don't belong to its associated parent. But that can cause issues if you're using field dependencies to hide a field temporarily, but you don't want the data to be removed. So in those cases, you should use business rules instead. And those are on-screen rules, very simple. I can do add, oops, not add field, in the wrong place here. Add an on-screen rule. And then once I get here, I can use the action to show, to change field visibility, and I can show and hide a field. If I hide a field or show a field, it will not impact the data that's within that field. It's just literally showing and hiding it on the form. Now, one thing to be aware of this, and we see sometimes also with the after save action that is set the color of a ticket. So if I have something, let's say like this, right? I'm going to create an on-screen rule, and I'm going to say when the status, so I'm going to play an example here, right? If I go hardware, I have a subcategory that shows up, but I'm saying, you know what? If I do sub status out of scope, I want to hide subcategory. I don't want it to be available on the form. Just using this as an example because it doesn't quite make sense. But so long as you can follow the logic here, right? So if sub status is out of scope, I want to hide subcategory. Obviously, I can't do that with field dependencies because it cannot have two parents. So I'm going to use a business rule over here, and I'm going to say sub status is equal to out of scope. I'm going to change the field visibility of subcategory, and I'm going to hide it. So hopefully this makes sense to you guys. It's pretty simple, right? I have a rule. So now if I were to publish this, now I'm not going to do that because this is one of my larger containers, takes about 5 minutes to publish. But if I were to publish this, the moment substatus changes to out of scope, the field will be hidden. The one thing you got to be careful of is that if I then say, oops, I didn't mean to put it there, and then I put it over here, the field will not show back up. For that, you need a separate rule. You need another rule that's the exact reverse of this. So you'd have something like not equal to out of scope, and then show the field, right? Because the business rules only do what you tell them to do. They won't undo themselves, right? You need to have a separate rule for that. So just be aware of that. But so you can use this to hide a field temporarily if you just want to hide it without wiping the data, or you can also use it to have a child field sort of have two parents. Hopefully that was clear for you guys, and maybe you even think of some use cases for it. That pretty much ends our session for this month. As always, if you have any questions, my contact information there was on the first slide. I'll pull it up here on the screen again. You can also send me a message here on the chat, and I can get to it real quick. If not, we have the survey you can fill out, and we will have our next session tentatively set for August 16th. Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next month.